Welcome back to the show. I want you to start today by thinking about the single deepest desire you hold in your heart. Just hold it in your mind for a second. It doesn't matter if it's an extraordinary, world-changing ambition, or something profoundly simple. Maybe you're an entrepreneur dreaming of building an empire. Or maybe you are like the orphan who simply dreams of a mother's embrace, the disabled child who just wishes to walk across a room, the blind person longing to see the morning light, or the unemployed father desperately seeking a way to provide for his family. We all have a dream. It is the fuel of the human condition. Without it, the engine stops. But here is the undeniable, uncomfortable truth about having a dream: the path to getting there is never a straight line. Life is an absolute masterclass in throwing sudden, brutal obstacles in our way. Think of these hardships like dark clouds rapidly gathering on the horizon, signaling a violent storm. These storms aren't just random acts of a cruel universe, they are tests. They are the friction required to test human courage. When the storm hits, when adversity strikes, human beings generally default to one of four reactions. The first is resignation. This is when you just throw your hands up and leave everything to fate. You say, "Well, whatever happens, happens," and you become a passive passenger in your own life. The second reaction is escapism. This is the instinct to run, to hide, to find a distraction, whether that's through substances, mindless scrolling, or literally running away from your responsibilities. The third, and much rarer response, is adaptation. This is the painful process of changing yourself to fit the new, harsh circumstances. And the fourth is the most tragic: despair. This is when the storm is so heavy that you sink into self-pity and completely collapse. I'm bringing this up because today, we are doing a deep dive into an absolute masterpiece of psychological and spiritual resilience. We are exploring the foundational concepts of the incredible book series Had Jong Tom Han, specifically the Volume 2 and Hung Dia Ben Di, which translates to Seeds for the Soul, from Simple Things. The entire mission of this book is to act as a companion for you in the dark. Its core, unbreakable thesis is this: your quality of life is absolutely not dictated by your external circumstances. It is dictated entirely by your attitude toward those circumstances. Let's unpack this by looking at how we define strength and success, starting with a concept that dates back to the Roman Empire. Imagine walking through the ruins of an ancient Roman arena. Etched into a crumbling wall is an inscription that basically says glory belongs solely to the warrior whose face is covered in dust, sweat, and blood. Why does this matter? Because in our modern culture, we have this toxic illusion that success is the absence of failure. We think the winner is the guy who breezed through untouched. But the truth is, a person who has never failed, a person who has never tasted their own blood in the arena of life, is incredibly fragile. They are destined for a massive, catastrophic collapse later on because they lack the vision and the moral authority that can only be forged in the fire of struggle. True greatness, the kind that echoes through eternity, belongs only to those who are willing to risk themselves for a purpose. Success isn't about avoiding the dirt. It's about how much dirt you can take to the face while still moving forward. And yet, while we are out there fighting in the arena, we often lose perspective. Perspective is the absolute bedrock of happiness. There is a profound concept in the book about the closed door. How many times in your life have you experienced a devastating loss, a breakup, a lost job, a failed project, and you just stood there, staring at the closed door of that opportunity? We stare so long, and with such bitter regret at the door that just slammed in our face, that we completely miss the new door that has quietly opened right beside it. We are so obsessed with what we lost that we become blind to what we are being offered. This ties into a harsh reality of human nature. We usually only realize the absolute value of something once it is gone. That's why the book offers this beautiful, piercing wisdom about relationships. It says it takes a minute to develop a crush on someone, an hour to genuinely like them, a day to fall in love with them. But it takes an entire lifetime to forget them. So, the advice is simple but profound. Do not chase fleeting things like physical appearance or immense wealth, because those things fade and fluctuate. Seek a person who makes you smile, because a genuine smile has the power to completely shatter the darkness of your hardest days. This internal calibration, this way of seeing the world, dictates everything, even how we view our daily grind. Let me tell you the story of the three masons. Imagine three men doing the exact same grueling labor, mixing mortar and laying bricks under the hot sun. You walk up to the first mason and ask, "What are you doing?" He looks at you, exhausted and annoyed, and says, "I'm mixing mortar and laying bricks." It's backbreaking work. You walk up to the second mason and ask the same question. He says, "I'm earning £5 a day to feed my family." Then you walk up to the third mason. He is doing the exact same physical movements, sweating just as much, but there is a light in his eyes. You ask him, "What are you doing?" And he looks up and says, "I am building a magnificent cathedral that my great-grandchildren will point to with pride." Same job. Same environment. Same physical toll. The only difference is the internal viewpoint. The third mason has elevated a mundane, repetitive task into a noble, generational mission. The value of your work is never determined by the work itself, it is determined by the vision of the person performing it. But having vision requires courage, and courage is often suffocated by comfort. Comfort is the silent assassin of greatness. There is a powerful parable about a Greek soldier who was diagnosed with a painful, terminal illness. Because he knew he was going to die anyway, he fought in battle with reckless, terrifying bravery. He was the first to charge the enemy lines, a one-man wrecking crew, because he had absolutely nothing to lose. His general was so impressed by the soldier's heroism that he spared no expense to find a legendary doctor to cure the man's illness. The doctor succeeds. The soldier is cured. But in the next battle, the general notices something shocking. The once fearless soldier is now cowering in the back, avoiding the front lines, desperately trying to protect his newly healthy, comfortable life. When the general confronts him, he realizes the tragic irony and tells the soldier, "Now you are truly dead." Think about that. When the soldier was dying, he was truly alive because he fought for a cause greater than his own preservation. When he became safe, he became a coward. Being truly alive requires the willingness to face danger, to step outside of the safety of the known. This brings us to the concept of fate. We love to use fate as an excuse. It wasn't meant to be, we say. But what if fate is something we dictate through our own conviction? Consider the story of the clever general who was leading his army into a battle where they were vastly outnumbered. His men were terrified, their morale was broken. They believed fate had doomed them. So, the general stops his army in front of a temple. He pulls out a coin and shouts to his men, "I will toss this coin. If it lands on heads, the gods have decreed that we will win. If it lands on tails, we will be defeated." He flips the coin high into the air. It hits the dirt. Heads. The soldiers absolutely erupt. Filled with this unstoppable, divine confidence, they march into battle and obliterate the superior enemy force. After the victory, a lieutenant says to the general, "Well, no one can change destiny." The general smiles, reaches into his pocket, and hands the coin to the lieutenant. The lieutenant looks at it and gasps. The coin has heads on both sides. Fate is not something that happens to you. Fate is a psychological tool. We create our own luck through the absolute, unwavering belief that we are meant to succeed. And sometimes, that belief creates what we can only describe as miracles. But what is a miracle, really? How much does a miracle cost? There is a heart-wrenching story about an 8-year-old girl who overhears her parents crying. Her little brother, Andrew, is terribly sick, and her parents are completely out of money. She hears her father whisper in despair, "Only a miracle can save him now." So, this little girl goes to her bedroom, empties her piggy bank, and counts out her entire life savings, $1.11. She marches down to the local pharmacy, puts the money on the counter, and tells the pharmacist, "I want to buy a miracle for my brother." The pharmacist is dismissive, but another customer in the store kneels down to her level. He asks what kind of miracle her brother needs. She explains the sickness. This man happens to be Dr. Carlton Armstrong, a renowned, world-class neurosurgeon. He takes her $1.11, smiles, and says, "This is exactly the price of a miracle." He performs the life-saving surgery for free. We look at that and say, "Wow, what a lucky coincidence." But the book argues that miracles are not magic. Miracles happen at the exact intersection of pure human faith, the innocence to ask for what you need, and the profound compassion of a stranger. The price of a miracle is action combined with empathy. This leads us perfectly into the next layer of our emotional architecture, how our smallest, seemingly insignificant actions can literally save lives. We walk around in our own little bubbles, completely unaware of the invisible battles the people around us are fighting. Let me tell you about Mark and Bill. Mark is walking home from school one day and sees a kid named Bill trip and drop all his books, his clothes, a baseball bat. Just a massive pile of stuff. Mark doesn't just walk by, he stops, kneels down, and helps Bill pick everything up. They walk home together, striking up a simple conversation about video games, sports, and the struggles of school. They become friends. Years later, right before graduation, Bill pulls Mark aside and tells him a secret. He says, "Do you remember the day we met, when I dropped all my stuff? I had cleaned out my locker that day because I was going home to commit suicide. I didn't want my mom to have to clean out my locker after I was gone. But after we talked, and we laughed, I realized that if I killed myself, I would miss out on this. I would miss out on friendship." Mark's simple, mundane act of picking up a few books was the tether that kept a human being from falling into the abyss. You have no idea the power you hold in a simple smile, a held door, or a moment of genuine listening. To navigate this complex web of human interaction and personal ambition, we need a strategy. The book beautifully compares life to a jigsaw puzzle. If you've ever put together a 1,000-piece puzzle, you know you can't just mash pieces together. It requires a methodology. First, you need patience. You cannot expect everything to make sense immediately. Second, you have to constantly step back and look at the picture on the box, the big picture, so you don't get lost in the frustrating, messy details of the moment. Third, and most importantly, you have to establish the edges first. In life, your edges are your core values, your boundaries, your non-negotiables. Once you have your boundaries set, the chaotic middle becomes easier to fill in. And finally, flexibility. If you are stuck on one section of the puzzle, you don't just sit there and cry. You walk away, work on a different section, and return later with fresh eyes. But even with a strategy, growth requires terrifying vulnerability. Imagine two seeds lying side by side in the fertile spring soil. The first seed looks up at the dark, heavy dirt above it and says, "I want to grow. I want to push my roots deep into the earth and thrust my sprout through the crust above to feel the sun." It takes the risk, pushes through the darkness, and blossoms. The second seed is terrified. It says, "If I push my roots into the dark, I don't know what I'll hit. If I push a delicate sprout through the soil, a bug might eat it. If I open my blossoms, a child might rip them off. No, it is much safer for me to stay right here in the shell and wait." So it waits. It chooses safety. A few days later, a chicken comes scratching through the dirt, finds the waiting seed, and eats it. The profound lesson here is that choosing safety over risk doesn't protect you, it guarantees your destruction. Growth requires you to face the darkness of the soil. To manage this growth, we have to talk about time and prioritization. You've probably heard the metaphor of the jar, but it bears repeating because we constantly forget it. A professor stands in front of his class with an empty glass jar. He fills it to the brim with large, heavy rocks and asks, "Is it full?" The class says yes. Then he pulls out a bucket of gravel, dumps it in, and shakes the jar so the gravel fills the spaces between the rocks. "Is it full now?" They nod. Then he pours in sand, which fills every remaining crevice. Finally, he pours in a cup of water. Here is the brutal truth about this metaphor. If you do not put the big rocks into the jar first, you will never, ever get them in. If you fill your jar with sand first, the endless emails, the social media scrolling, the petty drama, the trivial matters, there will be no room left for your big rocks. Your big rocks are your health, your family, your deepest passions, your education. Effective living isn't about time management, it's about priority management. You have to fiercely protect the space for your big rocks, or the sand of modern life will bury them. And speaking of the people who make up our big rocks, we have to be incredibly careful about how we treat them. Because emotional damage is permanent. There is a story of a young boy with a terrible, explosive temper. His father gives him a bag of nails and a hammer, and tells him, "Every time you lose your temper and say something cruel, I want you to hammer a nail deep into that wooden fence in the backyard." The first day, the boy drives 37 nails into the fence. But over the weeks, the act of hammering makes him aware of his anger, and the number of nails dwindles until, one day, he doesn't lose his temper at all. His father then says, "Good. Now, for every day you keep your temper, pull one nail out." Months pass, and finally, the boy proudly tells his father that all the nails are gone. The father walks him out to the fence, puts his hand on the boy's shoulder, and says, "You did well, my son. But look at the wood. Look at all the holes. This fence will never, ever be the same. When you say things in anger, they leave scars just like those physical holes. You can pull the nail out by saying, 'I'm sorry,' but the hole remains. The trauma in the heart of the person you lashed out at does not magically disappear with an apology." This brings us to the ultimate truth about communication: words are cheap. Actions are the only sincere form of communication. Look at the life of the brilliant, tormented artist Vincent van Gogh. Before he was a painter, he was a preacher, living among incredibly impoverished, suffering coal miners in Belgium. He would stand at the pulpit in his nice clothes and preach about faith and endurance, but the miners just stared at him with blank, exhausted eyes. His words meant nothing to them because he was speaking from a place of comfort. Realizing this, Van Gogh did something radical. He gave away his warm clothes. He gave away his food. He moved out of his comfortable room and started sleeping on the dirt floor of a freezing hut, sharing in their exact physical misery. He didn't have to say a word after that. His empathy was no longer an intellectual concept, it was a lived reality. Empathy isn't something you say to someone, it is the act of stepping into the dirt with them. Yet, as we navigate all this pain and effort, the book reminds us of a beautiful, hidden grace in life, the peace of ignorance. Life is a constant series of near misses. There's a story of a young boy sleeping peacefully by a riverbank. While he is asleep, a girl walks by, falls deeply in love with his peaceful face, but walks away. An hour later, a band of violent robbers approaches to mug him, but a pack of wild dogs scares them off. Later, a wealthy, childless couple passes by, considers adopting him and giving him an empire, but decides against it. The boy wakes up, stretches, and walks home, completely oblivious that in the span of an afternoon, he missed out on true love, avoided brutal violence, and lost unimaginable wealth. He just goes home and eats dinner. We spend so much time crippled by anxiety over what might happen, completely unaware of the thousands of disasters we narrowly escape every single day without knowing it. Sometimes, not knowing is the exact mechanism that allows us to maintain our peace of mind and just keep walking forward. But what happens when the disaster doesn't miss? What happens when you actually fall into the pit? This brings me to perhaps the greatest metaphor for resilience I have ever encountered. An old farmer has a donkey that accidentally falls into a deep, dry well. The donkey is crying out in terror. The farmer looks down, realizes the well is dry, the donkey is old, and there is no way to physically lift the heavy animal out. So, he makes a heartbreaking, pragmatic decision. He decides to bury the donkey alive to put it out of its misery and fill the dangerous well at the same time. He calls his neighbors, and they all grab shovels. They start throwing dirt down into the well. When the first shovelfuls of dirt hit the donkey's back, it screams in absolute despair. It knows it is being buried alive. But then, as more dirt falls, the donkey goes quiet. The farmer looks down and is astonished by what he sees. Every time a shovel full of dirt hits the donkey's back, the donkey does something incredibly deliberate. It shakes the dirt off, and it takes a step up. Dirt hits its back. Shake it off. Step up. Dirt. Shake it off. Step up. The neighbors keep shoveling, and the donkey keeps using the very dirt intended to bury it as a platform to rise. Eventually, the pile of dirt gets high enough that the donkey simply steps over the edge of the well and trots away. Why does this matter? Because life is going to throw dirt at you. The world is going to try to bury you under the weight of financial ruin, heartbreak, illness, and betrayal. The secret to survival is not avoiding the dirt. It is the absolute refusal to let the dirt bury you. You take the trauma, you shake it off, and you use it as a stepping stone to elevate your position. Resilience is the act of stepping on top of your suffering. This reframing of suffering is the ultimate superpower. It is how we rescue our self-image from tragedy. Imagine an elderly woman, Mrs. Smith. She has just been through a horrific accident and had her leg amputated. She is sitting in the hospital, drowning in depression, viewing herself as broken, defective, less than human. One day, a little boy from the pediatric ward wanders by. He is wearing an eye patch over one eye due to surgery. He looks at her missing leg, puffs out his chest, points to his eye patch, and proudly proclaims, "I'm a pirate!" It hits Mrs. Smith like a lightning bolt. This child has taken a physical defect and reframed it as a symbol of adventure, danger, and badassery. In that moment, her entire worldview shifts. Later, she is on a cruise ship, standing on the deck with her wooden crutch, the wind whipping through her hair. A child asks her what happened to her leg, and instead of feeling shame, she smiles a wild, proud smile and says, "I'm a pirate too!" How you label your wounds dictates your mental health. You are not a victim of your scars, you are the survivor who earned them. You are the pirate who survived the storm. And as we weather these storms, as we inevitably age and face our own mortality, we have to look at the structures that outlast us. In the Vietnamese tradition of Lunar New Year, Tet, families gather around a fire of burning dry leaves. A grandfather looks at the fire and tells his family, "Look at the leaves." Every year, the individual leaves wither, turn brown, fall to the ground, and burn away. But look up at the tree. The canopy remains. He asks his family what they have achieved that year. Some boast of great business success. One simply says, "I just went to school." The grandfather validates all of it. Because the profound philosophical truth he is imparting before he passes away is this: we are all just leaves. Individual mortality is inevitable. We will all fall. But the love we share, the traditions we uphold, the family and the community we build, that is the canopy. The canopy endures. The tree stays green long after the individual leaves are gone. Our legacy is the structure of love we leave behind. And the foundation of that canopy, the heaviest, most immovable force in the human experience, is unconditional love. Let me leave you with this final story. A mother is dealing with a highly rebellious, destructive teenage daughter. The parents have gone through a bitter divorce, and the daughter acts out by getting arrested for a DUI. The mother goes to the police station to pick her up. The daughter is bracing for a screaming match, bracing for anger and punishment. Instead, they get to the car, and the mother sits in silence. She reaches into her purse and hands her daughter a small, heavy object wrapped in a note. The daughter opens it. It's a rock. A smooth, river stone. She reads the note, which says, "This stone is over 100 years old. I want you to hold it, to feel how heavy it is, and to know that it will take at least that many years before I ever stop hoping for you. I will never give up on you." The daughter breaks down in tears. The mother didn't use anger. She used the literal weight and ancient age of a stone to symbolize the immovable, unbreakable nature of her hope. Unconditional love is the ultimate tool for reform. It is the soil in which the seeds of the soul are planted. So, as you go out into the world today, look at your life. Are you staring at a closed door, or are you looking for the open one? Are you letting the dirt bury you, or are you shaking it off and stepping up? Are you filling your jar with sand, or are you protecting your big rocks? Remember, the quality of your life is not determined by what happens to you. It is determined by the seeds you choose to plant in your own mind. Plant wisely. Shake off the dirt. And keep stepping up. I'll see you next time.